Well, I think everybody's minds are sufficiently blown up here. I think I would like to turn and ask if there are some audience questions at this point. Yes.
My question is about the secondary mission post-Pluto. Why isn't it a good idea, instead of next August, start thinking about those secondary objects, doing that now? Because the cone of encounter would radically change if you go over the northern hemisphere of Pluto or the southern hemisphere, the gravity assist type of. So you might be able to reach other objects if you think about how you encounter Pluto now to get to those secondary objects.
Right.
In 2019,
I think you could hear it, Alan. You could hear it fine. You don't need me to repeat.
No, I heard the gentleman. I could see him asking the question too.
Okay,
So
great.
it worked out great. Yeah. So first of all, in order to do the targeting burns, we need to collect more data about these objects and their orbits, and we need the Hubble Space Telescope to give us some more help to do that, because it's the only telescope that we have that can spot these. They're that faint. So I have to have more data. It's going to take more time. Secondly, our primary objective is to study the Pluto system. It's the planets of the Kuiper Belt that the Decadal Survey put at the top of the list. So we don't want to compromise the Pluto flyby in any respect, like our aim point, how close we come, what portions of the surface we go over, in order to help the Kuiper Belt part of the mission. We try to separate the icing from the cake, if you will, and Pluto's the cake, and the Kuiper Belt part is the icing. And we don't want to mix up those priorities. And we also don't want my team distracted, arguing about scientific priorities and orbital mechanics and fuel budgets and all those things in the middle of the Pluto encounter that we worked literally 25 years to succeed at. We don't want to take our eye off the ball next summer. So right after Pluto encounter, we will go down to NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C. and present a case based upon all of the calculations for how you get to target A or target B, for which one we prefer, and then we'll, working with NASA, make an announcement about that. Now, I have to separate targeting to go towards the target from getting the funding to do it. We have to still write a proposal for this extended mission, and NASA will have review panels and then make a decision about whether that extended mission will be funded or not. I kind of think it's a good case. The Decadal Survey asked
we
for
haven't
it.
asked that out at Pluto. I think we'd like to use it. Thank you.
Exactly, but there's a formal process.
Yeah.
And it's been around for decades of senior reviews for extended missions, and this is an extended mission. And I'll give you one reason why it's a good idea. If the spacecraft isn't healthy enough to get out to 2019 and conduct that flyby, you sure wouldn't want to cut a check to make it 2/3 of the way. You want to take a look after the Pluto flyby and say, how good are the instruments doing? How healthy is the spacecraft? Did it use more fuel than expected? All those things. And so we'll write that proposal and we'll send it to NASA, and they'll make a decision probably in late 2016 or early 2017.
Great. Question here, yes.
This is more of a personal question. What inspired you to become the science man that you are now? Who or what? How did you become who? Because you're like a Martian.
Thanks, you're handsome too. Well, when I was a little kid, all I wanted to do was grow up and get enough education that I could be a part of the space program. And I don't remember ever wanting to do anything else. And I just feel blessed and lucky that I got to not only do what I wanted, but it actually worked out that I got to get involved in so many interesting things. And that and not needing a lot of sleep helps, so I can get more done during the day than some people. Hope that answered your question. I've never been asked that before.
There's a question over here.
Just curious, maybe more of a trivia question, but do you know when New Horizons will be farther than Voyager from Earth?
Yes. Never. So, and here's why. Even though we were launched at a higher speed than Voyager, we only had one giant planet flyby for a gravity assist. They had up to 4, depending on which Voyager. And so they're actually traveling faster now than we are. And they got a head start, so we'll never catch them.
A question in the back, please.
Okay, so can you clarify the correct pronunciation for the Kuiper belt, since we could probably do a whole montage of how it's been pronounced at all space over the last
I'm not sure I can clarify, but I can tell you a little about it. So the Kuiper belt was named for a Dutch American astronomer, a guy named Gerard Kuiper, born in 1905, who came to the United States as a young man and spent his career here, and actually was the most famous of the mid-20th century astronomers who postulated that Pluto probably wasn't a misfit, that it fit in some context, like a belt of objects out beyond Neptune, like what we ultimately discovered in the 90s and 2000s. And I don't speak Dutch. I've heard people call it the Kuiper belt, the Kuiper belt, some other variations on it. If any of you are an expert in Dutch, I'd love to hear what you think. But in the American scientific community, we're pretty relaxed about it. Most people, I think, say Kuiper, some say Kuiper, but we don't really get very judgmental about it.
I always say Kuiper, and I think we had a guest, and I can't remember now which one it was, who corrected me real time in the show. Oh no, it's Kuiper. So that was, anyway, I think you might have been there, because it has been that. Yes. Well, actually, before you go ahead, let me ask, does anybody in here speak Dutch? Do we have any Dutch folks in here? No, that was sort of singing hand. Okay, no, can't help. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Just a note of curiosity, in the next few thousand years, what could these spacecraft leaving the solar system possibly encounter?
Okay, so I think you're asking what will happen to New Horizons after, let's say, it finishes Explorer.
A few thousand years from now, where could they end up?
Well, of course, the spacecraft will only operate for a few decades at most, because it'll eventually run out of power and we won't be able to run this onboard systems. So it will be a derelict, like Pioneer 10 and 11 that are escaping from the solar system. And the galaxy is just absolutely enormous. If you made a scale model like they did in Maine, where it's 1 mile from the Earth to the Sun, and Pluto's 40 miles down the road on average, the edge of the solar system at the Oort cloud is in South America. And our spacecraft, although it's the fastest ever launch and one of the fastest ever to travel, set a record for getting out to Neptune's orbit compared to Voyager, will still take about 100,000 years to get to the distance of the nearest star. So in a few thousand years, it won't be anywhere near even the nearest star that it will travel to.
All right, I think we have time for one or two more. Question here.
How far out will New Horizons get before it stops sending data back?
Well, that depends upon how long it's funded, but the maximum is when it runs out of power. And we think from the best projections we have, that'll be in the late 2030s, about 25 years from now.
Wow.
It should be.
Oh, I just said wow.
Okay, so it'll be about almost as far as the Voyagers are now. But the spacecraft is healthy, and there's every reason to believe that it could be operating into the 2030s. Unlike myself, I wonder if I'll be operating in the 2030s.
I have a question.
Oh, Tony.
Yeah, Alan, I was wondering, I know that some ashes of Clyde Tombaugh are riding on New Horizons. I was just wondering, did he have any idea that he'd be making this trip?
That's a wonderful question. So I'll tell you the story behind that. During the early days in which Pluto missions were being studied, before my team got involved, I was the chair of the science working group for those JPL mission studies. And the project leader, a guy named Rob Staley at JPL, was friendly with Tombaugh. And I knew Tombaugh a little bit. And
just interject, Clyde Tombaugh is the discoverer of Pluto. So for
right, he's the discoverer of Pluto, born in 1906, discovered Pluto in 1930 and died in 1997. But this was before he passed, and at one point, Staley and Tombaugh had a conversation, and I don't know who initiated it because I wasn't there, but they made an agreement that if there was a mission to Pluto, that Clyde would like to have some of his ashes flown if possible. Turns out Staley's JPL didn't end up winning the competition. But because Rob and I are friendly and I knew the story, once we got very far in the development, I asked the Tombaugh family if they would still like to do that and if they had made any provisions. You know, if they interned his ashes or they'd saved some, or how did that all happen over those intervening years? They were completely ready to go. They were just, his kids were ecstatic about it. His widow was, you know, nearly, you know, in tears. I mean, it really was very emotional. And we actually put that on the spacecraft down at the Cape just a few weeks before launch. Thanks for asking.
That is a good question on which to finish with New Horizons. I'd like to finish our time with you, Alan, asking sort of a broad and open-ended question. As I mentioned in the introduction, you are engaged in so many different aspects of space exploration and space development and space science, of course. Do you want to, I would like to hear your perspectives on space and its importance. You mentioned it from the time, and I share that as well, from my earliest memory. It was space, all space, only space was sort of how it was. But that's not so true for young people today. Perhaps not. Maybe you have a different perspective. Maybe you think it is. But I'd kind of like to ask a more open-ended question, and with reference to your own experiences and the big picture of the variety of activities that you undertake. You know, why is this important? Why is this important now? Why do you do it? Why should we care?
Wow. That's a lot of question. Let me try to do justice to some of that. I think that there are a lot of answers to a question like that. One is an answer I gave a little earlier. You know, I think that it just sets such a great example for the United States, you know, as a nation that's developing new knowledge for all mankind. And I think that's very important for us to do. And we're not the only ones that do it. The Europeans, you spoke about Rosetta at the beginning, they're doing lots of spectacular missions. And so are other countries like China and Japan, and even Korea and others are getting involved in planetary exploration, getting involved in human spaceflight, getting involved in big ticket frontline astronomy, things like that, and getting involved in studying the Earth so we better understand our own planet. But I also think that it's probably the most transformational thing that the human race is doing. And it went very fast in the Cold War time, and it hasn't gone fast for a while. But I think we're on the verge of a real breakout with some of the kinds of systems like reusable rocketry that SpaceX is developing, with suborbital tourism, even with orbital tourism, with humans, with outposts I expect in the next couple of decades on Mars and probably the moon and asteroids, all of them. And who doesn't think that in the distant future, in Jim Kirk's century, that we won't be living on many of the planets in our solar system and maybe traveling beyond? I think it's part of our destiny to leave this one vulnerable planet as our only hope, and to spread ourselves so that we're in a more stable position against things like asteroid impacts or ecological disasters or even a thermonuclear exchange, which maybe is old hat. But you know, there are lots of bad actors, and it'd be great if we had some backup systems like colonies on Mars and other places. And I think that the resources that are out there and the opportunity to expand economies and to expand knowledge, and frankly, my favorite four-letter word, to expand hope, all lie in space exploration. And I think the 21st century is going to be jet fuel for space exploration. I think we are right on the verge of something that looks a lot like the 1920s for airline development. And I'm just excited to be able to be a part of it and to watch it unfolding. It's fabulous.
Do you imagine you will personally go to space?
I sure hope so. I currently run a program at Southwest Research Institute, which is a suborbital researchers program. There are 3 of us who will be flying. We have 9 tickets to ride, if you will, on Virgin Galactic and X-Core. And the experiments are built, and we're waiting for them to go operational. So sometimes when I'm in a feisty mood, I say that 9 9 tickets is more than all of the U.S. astronaut seats expected to fly from Houston in the next 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
So we're pretty aggressive about it, and I think that 9 is just our beginning.
Well, that's
So I'm
wonderful.
looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, we look forward to it too. Obviously, we wish you a spectacular 2015. It's a very exciting year for everyone and especially for you. And it is our deep hope that after the dust settles and you've got your funding for the next phase of the mission, that you will come in real live person and tell us about what we learned when we went past Pluto in July of 2015. So with that, I'd like to thank you, Alan, for spending your time with us this evening. We had some people waving at you, so I hope you saw it.
I'd be happy to come back and tell you all about the Pluto system, and I really am honored that you asked me to come and talk tonight. And just one reminder, for all of you with devices around, right? Jot yourself a note. Just put that one word in, Plutopalooza, and sometime this spring, Google it, and then if you're so inclined, write us for a Plutopalooza kit and have your own party around the encounter.
Or bring it here and we'll all have a party together.
There you
So
go.
thank you so much, Alan. And we never got to your slides, but I'll show them because they're pretty, well, unless we want to, I'll try to do that now. I can't see that screen. I don't know if the guys in the back can switch for us. We had, there we go. On Pluto's doorstep, New Horizons, and I think everyone especially likes the fact that it's room number 9. So thank you again, Alan.
Thanks, Laura.
Pluto awaits, and indeed, I think 7 p.m. on the 14th of July, we will be here waiting for that word that it got through and is healthy and has data to send back to us.